What if I told you that one of the greatest silent crises of our time isn't about money, politics, or technology, but about something far more human, far more fundamental, and far more ignored? What if I told you that millions of men, men who appear successful on the outside, men with careers, families, and responsibilities, are quietly living lives stripped of one of the most essential forms of connection? And what if I told you that this isn't just about loneliness, but about the systematic dismantling of the spaces, structures, and cultural permissions that once allowed men to bond in ways that were natural, authentic, and powerful? Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share will challenge everything you've been told about male friendship, masculinity, and the forces shaping our society today. There's a silent epidemic sweeping through the lives of men over 35, and it's not depression in the way the media frames it, nor is it some personal failing that can be patched up with therapy or self help books. It's the collapse of male friendship, the extinction of brotherhood, and the erosion of the cultural fabric that once made male bonding not just possible, but inevitable. Picture this: a man in his 40s, successful by every external measure, sitting alone on a Friday night with a drink in his hand, realizing he has no one to call. Not because he's unlikable, not because he's broken, but because somewhere along the way, male friendship became extinct. This is not about loneliness as an emotional state, it's about isolation as a structural reality. And here's the uncomfortable truth: society benefits from this isolation. Men who don't bond are easier to control, easier to market to, easier to shame into compliance. But let's rewind, because to understand how we got here, we need to go back to a time when male friendship wasn't something you had to work at, when it was built into the very fabric of society. For most of human history, men bonded shoulder to shoulder, not face to face. They gathered in lodges, guilds, workshops, taverns, churches, volunteer brigades, sports leagues, hunting and fishing clubs. These weren't therapy sessions. Men didn't sit in circles talking about their feelings. They bonded through shared purpose, ritual competition, and mutual support. At their peak in the 1920s, nearly 1 in 4 American men belonged to a fraternal organization. Anthropologist Lionel Tiger called this male bonding a biological and social imperative as fundamental to men as any other human need. He argued that men evolved to form coalitions for hunting, defense, and resource acquisition. The drive to connect with other men isn't cultural, it's hardwired. But starting in the 1960s, these spaces began to disappear. Membership in fraternal organizations collapsed. By 2000, fewer than 5% of American men belonged to any lodge or club. Why? Three forces stand out. First, economic restructuring. The shift from manufacturing to service economies meant men no longer worked shoulder to shoulder in factories, construction sites, or workshops. The modern office, with its HR departments, surveillance, and sensitivity training, became a feminized space where traditional male bonding was viewed with suspicion. Second, suburbanization and commute culture. Men started spending hours isolated in cars, exhausted, disconnected from local bars, lodges, and community centers. Third, cultural warfare against male only spaces. Starting in the 1970s, any institution that excluded women came under attack. Title IX forced integration of male sports leagues and clubs. Lawsuits targeted fraternal organizations. The cultural message was clear: male only spaces were discriminatory, dangerous, unnecessary. But here's the uncomfortable truth: men and women bond differently. Women form friendships through emotional intimacy, face to face communication, and oxytocin driven bonding. Men form friendships through shared activity, loyalty, and testosterone driven coalition building. When you force male spaces to become co ed, you don't create equality. You create spaces where neither men nor women can bond in their natural way. And then came the rise of the toxic masculinity narrative. Suddenly, traditional male behaviors, competitiveness, stoicism, roughhousing, humor, were pathologized. The very mechanisms through which men bonded for millennia were reframed as dangerous, problematic, in need of correction. Men got the message: your natural way of connecting is wrong. You need to be more like women, more emotionally open, more vulnerable, more willing to sit in circles and share your feelings. And some men tried. They went to men's groups, they did the therapy speak, they learned to say, I feel instead of I think. And it didn't work because it wasn't authentic. It was a performance of what society said male friendship should look like, not what it actually is. Here's what society won't tell you: male bonding is fundamentally different. Men don't bond by talking about their problems, they bond by solving problems together. A man doesn't feel close to another man because they had a deep conversation about childhood trauma. He feels close because they built something together, competed together, survived adversity side by side. The activity is the vehicle, the bond is the byproduct. And this is why modern solutions fail. Therapy groups designed around female bonding patterns feel forced and uncomfortable for most men. Romance culture and vulnerability movements ask men to perform emotional intimacy in ways that don't come naturally, and then shame them when it feels inauthentic. Even well intentioned advice, reach out to old friends, schedule hangouts, be more vulnerable, misses the point. Men don't want to schedule emotional labor. They want to do things together. And here's the deeper truth: male friendship has always served a specific evolutionary and social function that goes beyond emotional support. Throughout history, male coalitions have been the primary check on tyranny. When men bond, they become harder to control. They develop loyalty to each other that supersedes loyalty to institutions. They create parallel power structures. This is why authoritarian regimes always target male social organizations first. It's why totalitarian movements work to atomize men, to make them dependent on the state rather than each other. Lonely men are profitable. They consume more. They're easier to market to. They're more politically compliant. They don't organize. They don't resist. The male friendship crisis isn't a crisis for men, it's a crisis of men for everyone else. And here's another truth society won't tell you: the cultural expectation that you should have a best friend is a female social model. Women typically have one or two extremely close friends with whom they share everything. Men historically have operated differently. Instead of one best friend, men have had bands of brothers, groups of 4 or 8 men with whom they share loyalty, purpose, and camaraderie. Spartans didn't have best friends, they had phalanxes. Medieval knights didn't have best friends, they had orders. Even in modern military units, the strongest bonds aren't between two men, they're among the squad. Shoulder to shoulder bonding, facing outward toward a common challenge, that's the natural male model. Men don't need friends, they need brothers. And brotherhood is forged through shared mission. You don't become brothers by hanging out and talking. You become brothers by building something together, competing together, overcoming adversity together, pursuing a common goal together. This is why men who serve in the military, play on sports teams, or work in high stakes professions often form the deepest bonds. It's not the time spent together, it's the shared purpose and mutual reliance. And here's the final piece society won't acknowledge: not all men need or want extensive social networks. Some of the most powerful, fulfilled men in history were relatively solitary. They had a small circle of trusted brothers and were perfectly content with that. The cultural pressure to have a large friend group, to be constantly social, to never be alone, that's feminine social anxiety projected onto men. Many men over 40 who society labels as isolated aren't suffering. They're selectively bonded. They have 2 or 3 men they go to war for, and that's enough. They've rejected the shallow, performative friendships of their youth in favor of depth over breadth. This isn't a crisis, it's wisdom. So, what's the path forward? If you're a man who genuinely wants to build or rebuild Brotherhood, here's what actually works. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. First, find mission based communities. Don't look for friend groups. Look for groups organized around doing something. Martial arts gyms, woodworking clubs, volunteer fire departments, shooting ranges, motorcycle clubs, rugby leagues, restoration groups, hiking and mountaineering clubs. The activity doesn't matter. What matters is that it's challenging, requires skill development, has natural hierarchy and a progression, involves regular commitment, and attracts other men seeking the same thing. You don't join to make friends, you join to get better at the thing. The brotherhood emerges as a byproduct. Second, embrace hierarchy and competition. Healthy male bonding requires both. Men need to know where they stand. They need to test themselves against other men. They need to earn respect through competence, not just receive it for showing up. This is why sports work, why martial arts work, why military units work. There's a clear structure, measurable progress, and the opportunity to prove yourself. Modern society tries to eliminate hierarchy and competition from male spaces, calling them toxic. But without these elements, men don't bond, they just coexist. Third, stop apologizing for male only spaces. If you want to create or join a male only group, do it unapologetically. You don't need to justify it. You don't need disclaimers about toxic masculinity. Men have the right to gather with other men, have the right to gather with other men, just as women have the right to gather with other women. And the fact that society has tried to shame men out of these spaces is part of the reason why we are where we are today. Brotherhood is not toxic. Competition is not toxic. Hierarchy is not toxic. It is the natural structure through which men have bonded for thousands of years. Strip those elements away, and what you're left with is isolation, disconnection, and men who feel like they don't belong anywhere. And here's the thing, men don't need to apologize for wanting to connect in ways that feel authentic to them. They don't need to justify wanting to build, compete, and grow shoulder to shoulder with other men. They don't need to explain why sitting in a circle talking about feelings doesn't resonate. They don't need to defend why they prefer action over conversation, mission over vulnerability, loyalty over emotional intimacy, because that's not dysfunction. It's difference. And difference is not wrong. It's natural. It's real. It's human. The collapse of male friendship is not just a personal tragedy for individual men, it's a societal crisis. When men lose brotherhood, society loses resilience. When men stop forming coalitions, society loses its checks against tyranny. When men stop bonding, society loses the parallel power structures that keep institutions honest. And when men are atomized, isolated, and disconnected, they become easier to control, easier to market to, easier to shame into compliance. That's not an accident. That's design. And if you think this is just about men, you're missing the bigger picture. Because when men lose brotherhood, families lose fathers, communities lose leaders, and society loses the very backbone of its resistance against authoritarianism. This is not just about men being lonely. This is about society being weaker. This is about freedom being more fragile. This is about the erosion of the structures that once made us strong. And here's the uncomfortable truth, the cultural expectation that men should have a best friend is not a male model, it's a female one. Women bond face to face through emotional intimacy, through oxytocin driven connection. Men bond shoulder to shoulder through shared mission, through testosterone driven coalition building. Men don't need best friends. They need brothers. They need squads. They need phalanxes. They need orders. They need teams. They need bands of brothers who will stand shoulder to shoulder with them, facing outward toward a common challenge. That's the natural male model. So, what does that look like in practice? It looks like men joining mission based communities. It looks like men finding groups organized around doing something: martial arts gyms, woodworking clubs, volunteer fire departments, shooting ranges, motorcycle clubs, rugby leagues, restoration groups, hiking, and mountaineering clubs. It looks like men embracing hierarchy and competition, testing themselves against other men, earning respect through competence, proving themselves through skill, loyalty, and resilience. It looks like men unapologetically creating male only spaces without disclaimers, without apologies, without shame, because men have the right to bond in ways that feel authentic to them. And here's the deeper truth: not all men need or want extensive social networks. Some of the most powerful, fulfilled men in history were relatively solitary. They had a small circle of trusted brothers, and that was enough. They didn't need dozens of shallow friendships. They didn't need constant socializing. They didn't need to be surrounded by people all the time. They needed depth, not breadth. They needed loyalty, not popularity. They needed brothers, not acquaintances. And that's wisdom, not crisis. So if you're a man watching this and you feel the weight of isolation, understand this: you're not broken. You're not failing. You're not dysfunctional. You're living in a society that has dismantled the structures that once made brotherhood inevitable. And the path forward is not to force yourself into models that don't fit. The path forward is to reclaim the models that do. Find mission based communities, embrace hierarchy and competition, create male only spaces, unapologetically build shoulder to shoulder, not face to face, bond through action, not through conversation, and understand that brotherhood is not just about you. It's about society. It's about resilience. It's about freedom. It's about the structures that keep us strong. Men don't need friends, they need brothers. And brothers are forged through shared mission. You don't become brothers by hanging out and talking. You become brothers by building something together, competing together, overcoming adversity together, pursuing a common goal together. That's the natural male model. That's the way men have bonded for millennia. And that's the way men will bond again if they reclaim it. So I'll leave you with this. What do you think about what we've discussed today? Do you agree that male friendship is in crisis, that brotherhood has been dismantled, that society has lost something fundamental? Or do you see it differently? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Let's start the conversation, not just about loneliness, but about brotherhood, about resilience, about freedom, about the structures that keep us strong. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.